breaking this hour, the National Hurricane Center has announced Tropical Storm Odette, Mark, has formed off the East Coast.
Yeah, we want to get right into our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, for the latest on our 15th named storm of the season. Dr. Knabb, halfway point is reached, but we're on the O storm already.
Yeah, we're making a bad habit out of using up the alphabet a lot faster than usual. Another very busy year. Now, the good news about Odette relative to the United States is that the impacts are not going to be all that significant, especially if we're careful at the beaches and on boats, because while it has formed just off our coastline, it will be by tomorrow heading the other way, but heads up for a place like Newfoundland. We'll talk about Invest 95L in a little bit, which still has a high chance of formation, just like pre-Odette did. This one just beat 95L to the punch to get the name first, so 95L is on pace to become Peter. But Odette is a tropical storm, max winds of 40 miles an hour, but it's already making that right-hand turn, moving to the northeast at 15 miles an hour, and it probably will lose its tropical characteristics before it reaches peak intensity, meaning you get to Sunday and now it's becoming a post-tropical storm, but it will probably peak in intensity Sunday night. So that's why heads up for St. John's, Avalon Peninsula, and Newfoundland. They could be dealing with something equivalent to a strong tropical storm, even though it won't be tropical anymore. But right now, it's far enough south that it hasn't totally encountered as strong a wind shear as it will later. And by the way, Odette, along with what's left of Nicholas, they have one thing in common. They are producing onshore flow into the coastline of the United States. So what's left of Nicholas is still producing a high risk of rip currents on the Florida Panhandle coastline. But the East Coast is feeling the effects of Odette, and especially from the Outer Banks of North Carolina all the way up through south-facing shores of Long Island, Odette is producing high risk of rip currents. And a lot of these beaches, unlike in the middle of the summer, might not have as many or any lifeguards. So please don't swim, get into the water in any unguarded beaches. So here comes this big trough and frontal system across the northern tier of the United States. That is going to be a large part of what steers and eventually shears more Odette farther off to the east. So here is where it is in the low-level spin with the colors, but you see it is heading eastward, and by Saturday night, we won't be feeling the effects of it, but our friends in Atlantic Canada will. Alex?
Right, and then we see something else on that tropical map, that, of course, Invest 95L. Still a lot of questions with this one and where it could be headed next week.
Yeah, and Odette and the mid-latitude jet stream pattern that it is going to be embedded in will have some effect on the future path of 95L, because they will be rounding in opposite directions the same area of mid-level high pressure in the Atlantic. 80% chance. So it went down to 70, now it's back up to 80. So we still have always thought this has a high chance of formation in the next 5 days, and that hasn't changed. It might form this weekend. It might take until early next week, but in either case, heads up in the northeastern Caribbean. The Leeward Islands could get some direct impacts from this. Here is our tropical wave with an area of low pressure around it. You can see big area of high pressure dominating the Atlantic. That's why it's headed westward, and the waters will get even warmer as it moves west-northwestward toward the southwestern Atlantic, probably missing the cold wake of former Hurricane Larry. So here it is on the water vapor, big area of middle and upper level high pressure too. So there's not a whole lot of wind shear on this. And if we zoom in on the visible imagery, here are the Leeward Islands, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and here is our tropical wave with the area of low pressure. It's looking more organized than yesterday, a little bit better definition in the low level spin, and some increase in the thunderstorm activity. And as it gets toward even warmer waters, we would expect its organization to continue to increase. So here's high pressure that is going to be steering Odette eastward, and it will also serve to bring 95L, probably future Peter, westward. And you get to Sunday, they'll be at the same longitude, and then they'll be passing by one another. The challenge with Odette, though, is the models don't all agree on how fast it gets out of the picture. The more it hangs back and stalls and sits in the middle of the Atlantic there, the more it could draw Odette northward. Now, that might be to the benefit of the folks in the Leeward Islands, because it might gain enough latitude to miss a direct impact there, but then that might be bad news for Bermuda. That's just the Euro model's depiction. And if you look at the GFS, next 2 to 3 days, very similar, but very, very close approach, if not direct impacts on Monday or so in the Leeward Islands. And you see how the GFS has Odette going bye-bye and bringing what is left of 95L if it runs into wind shear farther west. But, Alex, I don't trust these systems that stay weak and get farther west. Could they blow up at the last minute? So we can't take our eyes off 95L in the continental U.S.
And we are watching a tropical trio in the Atlantic with possible chances of development. Closer to home, South Florida dry so far, but could that potentially change?
Yeah, let's begin with meteorologist Erica Delgado. She is live in the Plex with your forecast. Erica, good morning.
Hey, Lorena, good morning to you. South Florida, we'll start with the system that formed yesterday afternoon, and that's Tropical Storm Odette, formed just off of the mid-Atlantic coastline. Right now, winds of 45 miles per hour. This is as of 5 a.m. It's moving towards the northeast, so the good news is that it is moving away from land. And other good news is it's battling a lot of strong upper-level winds, and you'll notice that the thunderstorm activity is displaced to the east of the center. So this is the center, and this is all the showers and thunderstorms associated with it, which is well offshore. So let's take a look at the latest forecast track. It will continue to move towards the northeast and possibly producing some large swell up and down the eastern seaboard. And some strengthening is possible through the next 24 hours. However, by tomorrow, Odette is expected to lose its tropical characteristics as it races towards the northeast across portions of the northern Atlantic. Elsewhere in the tropics, not only do we have Odette, but we have two other areas that we're keeping a close eye on. One is an area of low pressure with a very high chance of development, and this could be our next tropical depression or storm as early as today, if not by tomorrow. That is moving towards the west-northwest. We'll have to keep a close eye on that one. And then there's another disturbance that's to the southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. This one is barely moving right now, but eventually will begin to lift towards the northwest. Right now has a low development chance. For us here in South Florida, all is quiet so far, but we'll take a closer look at your local forecast. That's coming up in a few minutes.
Time now for our daily check on the tropics.
Meteorologist Luke Doris is in the Weather Authority Center with a look at a new system that just formed tonight, Luke.
It sure did. We have a new tropical depression. We've been keeping eyes on this disturbance that's east of the Caribbean islands. Here's the Lesser Antilles right here. So a depression has formed. This is forecast to become Tropical Storm Peter by tomorrow. And the track is north of the islands and hooking back out to sea. So 40-mile-per-hour low-grade tropical storm and then staying out into the ocean. So good news there with the forecast on Peter. Elsewhere, we have what's left of Odette that's up here in the Atlantic. It's no longer a tropical system, though. So moving on from that one, and then third disturbance is out there off of Africa. That one goes to the north. So South Florida, we're in the clear. Everything's nice and good for us.
Good morning, South Florida. Time is 5:08, and I'm tracking two tropical systems out there. The first one, let's talk about Tropical Storm Peter that just formed a couple minutes ago with sustained winds of 40 miles per hour, and it is moving northwest at 15 miles per hour. Good news, the latest forecast track takes it northwest. By Wednesday into Thursday, it will make that turn to the north as a tropical storm system. Meanwhile, we have tropical depression number 17 that formed earlier this morning as well, just southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. It will become a tropical storm system later today, probably after 11 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then eventually it will track towards the northwest and it will be a fish storm.
We do have to talk about the tropics. Yes, still in full swing right now. We just passed the peak of hurricane season and we do have a long way to go. So if you were watching Nicholas and you were focused on that, we did have Odette that's already come and gone. We also have brand new named storm. It's Tropical Storm Peter. Behind that, Tropical Depression 17. Behind that, another area to watch. So we do want to bring in Dr. Greg Postel, because even though we're getting into fall, you think change of the seasons, okay, maybe we don't have to worry about the tropics anymore. The tropics says, no way, not yet.
And tropics have other ideas. You're exactly right about that, Molly. And we are dealing with, let's say, Tropical Storm Peter. This is the one that I want to talk about. Molly outlined a few others, but this is the one that's closest to home and at least has some potential, I think, for strengthening. Not right now, because it looks kind of rather unhealthy, but I think over time it's got a shot at strengthening. 45 miles per hour in the wind speed. By the way, there are the Leeward Islands of the Lesser Antilles and the Windward Islands here. It's going to be a brush by with some breezy conditions, but I don't think in any of those islands we're going to see a whole lot of thunderstorm activity, in part because we don't have a whole lot of thunderstorm activity with Peter to begin with. There's the circulation center. Can you see that? Isn't that cool? I mean, I could look at this all day. that is the area of lowest pressure, right near the ocean surface, right in there. That's why the wind is swirling around it. The thunderstorms, for the most part, are way over there. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, what happened to this thing? Didn't it look better yesterday? It did. It looked better yesterday, but the effects of dry air aloft have gotten in there, and they've gotten in there on the heels of some storm relative winds, some wind shear that has allowed that to happen. And the strong winds aloft are clearly out of the south and southwest, and so that dry air kind of circulating around Peter has gotten in there thanks in part to that wind aloft. And we're going to continue to see that plague Peter for a while, which is why I don't think it's going to strengthen anytime soon. But eventually it might break free from some of that, or sort of isolate itself and insulate somewhat from those hostile surroundings, but on a path that basically looks like this. Each one of these lines is a different forecast from the GFS model and some of the other models I put on there. So there's an ensemble suite here of options to choose from about where Peter eventually goes. And you can pretty much see that it begins to curve northward with time, well east of the United States. Good news there. We'll talk about why that's the case coming up. But I think when I see this in these short-range models tracking Peter like that north of the Leeward Islands, well, it's going to continue to move even north of that over time. And by midweek, we'll be well east of Puerto Rico or northeast, Molly, on its way, I think, out to sea.
We're in good company with this wetter pattern. Much of the state also dealing with lingering tropical moisture and some active sea breeze boundaries, and still some ongoing rain over much of north and central Florida, including a few thunderstorms. Now, the other active portion of September involves the tropics. And as you would expect, there's activity to point out. If we remember at the beginning of the weekend, we were still following Odette. That is just remnants right now, but the National Hurricane Center in this area here believes that it could possibly regenerate into a tropical or subtropical system. So we may talk about that once again. In the meantime, fairly newly formed tropical storm Peter, from a depression 16 to the tropical storm strength in the past 24 hours, 1,500 miles away from South Florida. And we look at the other classified system right now in this red shaded area. That is tropical storm Rose, which formed today out of former depression 17, more than 3,000 miles away. And that's not even all. There's another wave coming off Africa that will have a decent chance of developing. So we're going through those names very quickly. Of those two systems, nothing to worry about in terms of land or a threat to the United States. Rose already heading into a northerly fashion, and there's Peter. It's going to miss the islands of the Caribbean and may get a little closer to Bermuda in weak fashion, but that might be it out of Peter.
NBC6 First Alert Weather, certified most accurate 8 years in a row.
Okay, so let's start off with tropics. How much more of this nonsense do we still have ahead of us? We still have a little ways to go. So peak season, first half of September. So we're getting into the back half of September. Still, according to statistics here, pretty high chances of tropical action out there in the Atlantic still, even into late September. Then you get this little mini peak in October. Then things slide pretty quickly. So we have about another, let's say, a few weeks or so, statistically speaking anyway, of a lot of activity. But, every season's a little bit different, right? So let's go ahead and track what's going on here right now with Peter. We have two named storms. So Peter, just, a couple hundred miles away from the northern Leeward Islands here. Don't expect much in the way of impacts. Isolated 1 to 3 inches of rain at best across this region, and maybe some slightly higher swells. But in general, we expect this to remain a tropical storm, stay away from land as it makes that eventual turn to the north and northeast this weekend, hopefully dying out as a depression. Much farther to the east we go. Tropical storm Rose now in the far eastern Atlantic, hundreds and hundreds of miles to the west of the Cape Verde Islands. Winds at 40 miles per hour, moving to the northwest at 15 here. Could get some slight strengthening here briefly in the short term, but none of that really matters. This is staying out over the open waters of the Atlantic, only bringing some squally weather to maybe folks with, shipping route impacts here. That's it, at best, affecting some of the shipping routes. Okay, so we have our two tropical storms, also looking at two other areas This is a non-tropical low, though, but bringing some gusty winds right now. Could be looking at some development here over the next few days, 30% chance or so out over the open waters here of the Atlantic. No impact to anybody, again, outside of the shipping routes. And here we go again with yet another area moving off the African coast not too long ago. A lot of showers and thunderstorms with this one. A medium chance of development over the next several days or so. Way too early to be talking about impacts with that system, but we'll continue to watch it.
Now, we've also got a lot going on in the tropics, but Dr. Nab, you and I most famously did a football reference where we tackled one another, kind of. That was pre-COVID, by the way, but this front that Mark just described is kind of going to set the block, so to speak, and protect us from some of these tropical weather systems.
Yeah, Alex, we called it lines of defense, and wow,
yes.
Do we have a lot of lines of defense up right now between the continental U.S. and Tropical Storm Peter, because it looks like, wow, Northeast Caribbean moving west-northwestward. Is this going to be trouble for the Bahamas, for the continental U.S.? No, but maybe it'll get close to the Bahamas and bring some breezy conditions and some rain, but not much else. There's just no way in the steering pattern for Peter to make it to Conus, but it could, if it survives the wind shear it's contending with, get to Bermuda this weekend as a tropical storm. I mean, right now it's moving west-northwestward toward the southeastern U.S. because of the high pressure to the north, but when you look at what's coming with that cool down with the front late this week to the eastern U.S., there's too much steering that's going to push it to the north. And if you look at what's going on right up against it, so if you consider this to be the line of scrimmage, here's the tropical storm. You got a lineman here, you got a lineman here, and they're going to be staying to the west of Peter, just continuing to hammer it with wind shear. So it's just not going to be able to strengthen in this kind of environment. And you can tell how the open swirl has been pretty evident today. All the thunderstorms blown off to the north and east. So we're just going to get 1, 2, 3 inches of rain locally, maybe a little bit of flood concern for a place like Puerto Rico, but then Peter will be headed northward late this week. Now we've got Rose and we've got 98L. Now Rose is going to be drawn northward in the direction of the post-tropical version of Odette, which is pretty strong. But 98L, that's the one we got to worry about later as the wind shear is weak down to the south there, and it's going to be moving west. So an 80% chance of this next tropical wave becoming a tropical depression or storm. The good news on this one, Mark, is if it's going to affect any land areas, that's going to be at least a week away. We have time to watch it.
Going to the rainfall chances, noticing I'm already at 20% by 8 o'clock, 40% by 10. We're definitely going to see a better chance of afternoon storms today. Currently, the rain on the radar just flying in off that ocean breeze. So we had that first cluster over parts of Miami-Dade into Broward. Weston going to get soaked, and then we have another cluster expected. By Kendall, a shower too. So let's go to the tropics. So we have 2 tropical storms we're still tracking. No threat to land as Peter stays north of the northern Leeward Islands. Tropical storm Rose stays offshore as well, though this area is what we're going to need to watch. We are watching some long-range models showing this could be our next tropical depression or storm, but where it's going to go in the next 14 days is what I'm keeping my eyes on. More details on your forecast coming up.
Yeah, the Florida Keys, you've got some rain in the Middle Keys going on right now. So it's been a busy day in terms of rain, and this is not going to stop anytime soon. The unsettled weather is going to continue for several more days until, now don't get too terribly excited here, but we might see a cold front next week by Monday. Now, it's not going to bring cold air, but what it could do is lower our humidity values and therefore cut our rain chances. So something to look forward to if it does materialize. Meanwhile, in the tropics, Peter is the name of one storm, Rose is the name of the other. None of those systems are going to be on tropical base paths that could impact us here in Florida. This is Peter, tropical depression, 35-mile-an-hour winds right now north of the northeastern Caribbean. A lot of the rain over the ocean, some showers and storms that are indirectly linked to Peter have affected Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. This is Rose. Out in the eastern Atlantic, it is also no threat to the U.S. out of the ocean, and also no threat to the U.S. This one, new one, 90% chance that it could develop, but it is late in September now. Autumn starts tomorrow, and it's 3,300 miles away. There is likely going to be a front or a dip in the jet stream that'll catch it and start to turn it towards the northwest, like you can see happening here. So I'm not concerned about that system.
Well, it is busy out there in the tropics. We're already through the R in storm names. Yikes. And now there's another disturbance out there in the Atlantic we have to watch closely. Hurricane specialist Brian Norcross is joining us with your tropical update.
All right, yeah, Christy, we actually have a new tropical depression just named by the National Hurricane Center. It's Tropical Depression 18. Now, here's the busy map out there. All these systems up to the north, from Odette to Peter to Rose, they're all either dying out or weak or not really consequential. The only thing they might do is kind of make the pressure lower generally over the Atlantic. So that's going to make the driving force behind Tropical Depression 18 be less. And that's going to mean it's going to move kind of slower. That's the bottom line on that. Here's the satellite here this afternoon out there. You can see it wrapping up. It looks like it's going to be Tropical Storm Sam by tomorrow, so we'll make it to the S, and this will be only the second time in the record book that we get to the S this early in the hurricane season. There's the cone. You see 35-mile-an-hour winds is the estimate for the peak winds, but I want you to look out here, 115-mile-per-hour estimate for the forecast out 5 days out. Now, this is only 5 days, so it hasn't even gotten near the islands in 5 days. It's a slow mover. We're going to watch this a long time. A lot of things can change to the north. So the bottom line as we look ahead here, it's a forecast is for it to bend to the north. How close is it to the mountains? We'll see. And when we look all the way to next week, the models are forecasting a dip in the jet stream there. If that happens, that'll be good. It'll deflect it, but it's going to be a battle between that low pressure and this high pressure over here. Which one is going to drive the system more? Anyway, we have a long time. 5 days is not even, like I said, to the islands. It's thousands of miles away.
Michael, it seems like you're always juggling 4 systems in the tropics. When one disappears, another one shows up. It's always 4.
I
always
know.
4.
It's a balancing act. It's so often this season, Liz, we've had that occur. However, we are losing Peter, all right? So Peter's pretty much gone, the remnants of Peter. But like you said, we gained Tropical Depression 18. So after tonight, I can say we got 3 systems we're juggling, and we're probably going to lose Rose tomorrow out there. So there are the systems spinning out there. The big news today is Invest 98L was upgraded to a depression. Closed circulation was found at the surface according to satellite imagery. It's kind of got that spin where it looks like it's going to become a powerful hurricane where the outer band's already beginning to form on TD18. Now, it's not any stronger than it was at 5 o'clock. Top winds are 35, moving west at 15. Expected to become Tropical Storm Sam perhaps tomorrow night or on into Friday. And then it's forecast to become a hurricane early on Saturday morning. Still expected to become a major Cat 3 by Monday night here as it's pointed across the Atlantic. Here is the northern and leeward and windward islands out there. Where does it go from there? Well, we can look at the long-range spaghetti plots here. And keep in mind, long-range models can be changing. There could be large swings here, so just take this with a grain of salt. I mean, it still looks pretty good. Most of the models do want to recurve it far east of not only Florida, the U.S., but the Caribbean as well. Here's a model which brings it a little bit closer towards the Bahamas. So what about the European model? That's not shown there, but we can show that here for you tonight. So here's a look at the areas of spin and the steering level. The steering winds are up at about 20 to 30,000 feet, pushing those high cloud tops along across the Atlantic. And you can see there is a soon-to-be Sam, and in 1 week from now, it'll be very near the northern Leeward Islands. Here is a trough of low pressure, dip in the jet stream moving off the east coast. That will eventually start steering it. The Bermuda high is out here, the clockwise flow moving it along. This trough actually sharpens into a cutoff low over the eastern U.S. with its counterclockwise flow, and then that will erode the high and elongate it north-south. So you can see this channel, it just goes right up in between them. And if that pans out, this system has no chance of making it to the East Coast. But again, an 8 to 10 day forecast, it can change, something we'll need to watch until it gets north of our latitude. So again, the next name on the list is Sam. We've only got 3 left until we get to that auxiliary list. Meanwhile, here is Tropical Storm Peter. Peter has petered out, if you will. This is now the last advisory on Peter, moving to the north-northwest. That system moves out into the Atlantic. We've got Tropical Storm Rose out there with hardly any thunderstorm activity left, and this will likely become a remnant low tomorrow as it moves out across the middle of the Atlantic. Meantime, today, wow, great picture of that funnel cloud out there across the airport with heavy rain across the region. No rain out there now, but there will be some spotty showers and storms popping up tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. Again, can become heavy with downpours, frequent wind gusts out there, and local flooding. high temperatures, upper 80s to near 90 across the area.
Well, we still have active tropical season. The warm waters of the Atlantic still obviously festering out there with these tropical systems. And, you know, petered out. Rose is gone, now a remnant. So we've got the remnants of Odette up to the north, but still have a small chance. But really, the focus is going to be on TD18, and we're going to have a long time to watch this. It is on the fringe of becoming Sam. It's very close to becoming a tropical storm. The guidance really explodes this, by the way, as we go through the next couple of days. It doesn't have anything to hinder it. If anything, it may even slow down a little bit. So you look at this morning, what was missing overnight in terms of the advisory this morning at 5 a.m. was the deep convection around the center. It looks like it's pretty deep to me, so we're on our way to becoming Tropical Storm Sam, and then we're going up from there. As a matter of fact, a lot of the guidance makes this a major hurricane, some beyond that. What you're looking at here is everything but the European model, which is the closest to the Leeward Islands or the Lesser Antilles, all right? And it's going to favor, at least the European does, the westward end of that track. But you can see NHC, by the time we roll into Tuesday early morning, see, that's next Tuesday, we've got ourselves a major hurricane on our hands. And I think the fourth one of the season, let's see, Grace, Larry, Ida. Somebody correct me if I'm missing one of these. I think maybe our fourth major hurricane will be on the way. So let me show you this European model because you can't really rule it out at this point. Right? They have a much stronger ridge, plus they keep it weaker longer, which is interesting. And I don't know if it's going to stay weak, so I don't know if I buy into this. But either way, the fact that it does keep it close to the Lesser Antilles and eventually the Bahamas is of interest because unless that big trough can turn it, right, it's going to keep making its way toward the United States. So you can't rule out impacts from the United States. But the difference from yesterday and today is, I think, big. We were 1,000 miles between the GFS and the European yesterday. Today, we're only 650. That certainly doesn't bode a lot of confidence in any long-range forecast. The good news is, Tevin, we got a lot of time to watch that, and we're talking about something that's going to be even into next weekend. Yeah. Not this weekend, but next weekend before we have to worry about it.
And welcome into Weather Nation. Here on this Thursday, we have a brand new tropical storm to tell you about. This is Tropical Storm Sam in the open Atlantic. At this point, has sustained winds at 50 miles per hour, is moving to the west at about 16 miles per hour. You can see the Cabo Verde Islands there. This is about halfway between Cabo Verde Islands and the Lesser Antilles, and will likely head that direction over the next few days. So we just got this in at the top of the hour. I wanted to bring it to you live here on Weather Nation and give you the latest forecast track and information. Earlier this morning, we had TD18, Tropical Depression 18. Then at 9 a.m., winds were found to be strong enough, sustained enough to be Tropical Storm Sam. And this latest forecast track, maintaining tropical storm strength through tomorrow morning, then expected to become a hurricane Category 1 this weekend, eventually potentially becoming a major hurricane Category 3 or greater as we head towards Sunday morning. This is likely to move to the west primarily and then a little bit of a northwest track. No immediate threat to the United States, but worth monitoring, especially if you have interest in the Lesser Antilles, because you can see the track certainly widens out here. That's really typical and likely to see some adjustments and changes over the next few days. Our forecast models showing a little bit of disagreement. Some of them dive it a bit farther south, which means more so in the Lesser Antilles need to be watched. Closer to home, we have the remnants of what was Tropical Storm Odette, continuing to just do its thing out in the open waters. It could become subtropical, and if it gets another name, then that would be pretty impressive. But overall, not looking all that good. Post-tropical cyclone Rose, that's the latest update as well, was a tropical depression, now post-tropical, as it continues to just do its thing in the Atlantic. Our hottest topic right now certainly going to be Sam, and we'll continue to keep you updated throughout the hour with the latest. Again, no immediate threat to the United States.
Goodness gracious, it is spectacular out there. A very quiet day for many, not for everybody, but for many. Let's take a look at where the active weather is up around the Great Lakes, where we've got that low just spinning showers over some of the same areas. And then parts of the mid-Atlantic, northeast, we still have that tropical moisture plume that is keeping the rain around, but for most of the country, it's a taste of fall, and it is dry, bright, quiet for many. You look at the satellite picture, there is barely a cloud in the sky across the central and southeastern U.S. Far away, far, far away is Tropical Storm Sam. And Dr. Knapp, this is going to take some time to get here, but this is one that's worth watching. And when I say get here, get closer to here. Still a lot of uncertainty about where exactly this could be going.
Yeah, now we still can't rule out that it does eventually make landfall on the east coast of the U.S., but there are a lot of possibilities in scenarios in which it doesn't do that, but it's going to take a long time to play out. It could be not this weekend, but the next weekend when it is perhaps near Bermuda, near the east coast of the U.S., because as fast as it's moving now westward at a pretty good pace at 16 miles an hour, it's going to be moving up a lot more slowly than that. Now, that number is going to go down, but the number that's going up and will continue to go up probably at an even more rapid pace is the maximum sustained winds that are now up to 60 miles an hour here on the 5 p.m. advisory from the Hurricane Center. But it will be slowing down quite a bit, probably only going about half of that speed when we get to the weekend. So when you look at the new intensity forecast, it makes it a major hurricane by Saturday afternoon. So that timeline keeps getting moved up, as we mentioned last hour that it probably would. And it'll be a hurricane by tomorrow in all likelihood. It's already at 60, could make it to 74. 75, even later tonight. But certainly by tomorrow it will be. And then we've got Monday and Tuesday here, a major hurricane getting closer and closer, but still east of the Leeward Islands. So you can see how this is only going 8 or 9 miles an hour in here because of the weakening of the ridge to the north. Now, the upper level pattern is just unfortunately ideal for strengthening. No wind shear anywhere near it. And so nothing to bother it at all, and plenty of fuel with the warm waters along the forecast path. So all signs point to a rapid intensification scenario. Nearly every major hurricane that this is likely going to be goes through rapid intensification at some point in its life. And right up to the last image before sunset here, you see the tremendous overshooting tops here. It looked like an eye there earlier, didn't it? But that's a little bit of a fooling trick the atmosphere sometimes does. But the low-level center has gone back underneath the convection, but the deep convection is building around that low-level center. So it is in the process of building its inner core, and so rapid intensification to a major hurricane could begin at any time now. So I know everybody wants to know the answer to the question, Mike. Is this going to make it to the east coast of the U.S.? And in a few minutes, I'm going to break down what the models do beyond day 5. And, you know, some of the models agree in some ways, some of them disagree in some ways, just like you and Alex.
We always agree, Dr. Nam. I don't know what you're talking about.
More importantly, as we head toward the end of the weekend, here it comes, an early season cool front. This is legit. It's going to move all the way through the Palm Beaches and the Treasure Coast, drop temps a little bit, and really lower humidity. Next week looks just about perfect. And finally, we've got a tiny but increasingly powerful storm in the central Atlantic. This is Sam, on the verge of becoming not just a hurricane, but maybe a pretty strong one in the coming days. Right now, winds are 70. It's almost a hurricane and almost assuredly will be one when you wake up tomorrow morning. Forecast from the Hurricane Center continues to call for rapid intensification, a major hurricane by the weekend. And as we head toward Tuesday, the storm here north of the Lesser Antilles, Category 3, but it could get even stronger. We'll talk more about the future track of this storm and the big impact from that cool front when I'm back in a couple minutes.
As of 5 a.m., Sam is now a hurricane. No surprise. There's nothing but the influence of energy to bring this system to get stronger and stronger. As of 5 a.m., winds at 75 miles per hour. It's moving west-northwest. It is expected to make its way close to the northern Leeward Islands. We need to watch the system because there's a lot of elements in the atmosphere that will play a part in the forward path of the system. We have the area of high pressure, we have the jet stream, but as of right now, we're just going to go out till Tuesday. Speaking of what's going on in the Atlantic, we have 3 other areas we're watching as well. 2 with a 40% chance of development, 1 with a 20% chance. All right, the weekend is upon us, and I have some great news. I'll have the details coming up.
I'll just leave scattered thunderstorms in the forecast for the rest of the day. But in earnest, we're actually catching a break for the moment, which I know a lot of you can appreciate. Now let's get to the tropics. We now have our 19th named storm of the season. Subtropical storm Teresa has formed just north of Bermuda, about 155 miles north of Bermuda. Notice the forecast track on this one. It basically heads north-northwest to northeast. Moving northwest now at 14 miles per hour, winds of 45 miles per hour. Essentially not a threat out there, but another name crossed off the list. If we get a Victor and then a Wanda, we'll be done with the list for this season. Meantime, Hurricane Sam, this is the real doozy. Winds of 85 miles per hour, moving west at 12 miles per hour. This is the new advisory from the National Hurricane Center. The positioning, 1,200 plus miles east-southeast of the northern Leeward Islands. And here is that projected path. Also notice it's forecast to keep getting stronger, Category 2 tomorrow morning, then later Saturday, Category 3, Sunday, Category 4, showing winds of 40 miles per hour as we're moving from Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, still staying as a major hurricane based on the intensity forecast. And notice this forecast track. Question mark, how close will it get to the northern Leeward Islands? Hopefully keeping plenty of distance, but can't rule out it being close enough that they notice there's a major hurricane, and we don't want a situation where it's raking across any of those islands. But we'll have a long time to watch this as it relates to the U.S. I'll be back in a few minutes with a look at our forecast for the weekend. A lot going on.
In the tropics, still pretty busy. We've got newly formed as of 5 o'clock this afternoon subtropical storm Teresa, so you can check the T storm off the list. That's going to dissipate in a couple of days. And we've got Sam here. Sam looking pretty ferocious tonight. It's a small hurricane. It's only about 32 miles from hurricane side to hurricane side of the hurricane conditions. About a 10-mile wide eye there. A compact hurricane, and typically compact hurricanes, small hurricanes, they can gain intensity quickly, but they're also a little bit fragile to wind shear and things like that. Category 2 right now, there's the future track moving to the northwest. Category 3 tomorrow, likely Category 4 by Sunday and Monday. And then it's off to the northwest. Looks like it is going to stay to the east of the islands there. And if we look at the models here with the 5-day Hurricane Center track, there it is. There's the cone. This white area, these are our most skillful models here. They're called consensus models. The Hurricane Center is basing their forecast on those models there. Let's extend it out to 7 days, and you can see more of a turn to the north there. Well, to the east, of course, we'll watch it, but we're not going to worry about it.
But where we do find very active conditions in the tropics right now, the Atlantic, we have 2 named storms, and we're watching 2 other areas. We'll start all the way closest to home to the north of Bermuda. That's where we find subtropical storm Teresa. And then to the south of Bermuda, we found an area with some development chance to the next 5 days, though that's associated with remnants of what was Peter. Across the central Atlantic, we have Hurricane Sam moving towards the west-northwest, and then an area, tropical wave is expected to move off of Africa in the next few days. We'll start off with Sam, winds of 110 miles per hour, expected to become a major hurricane later today as it moves towards the west-northwest. No watches or warnings have been issued with the system. High pressure will continue to steer it in that direction, but the good news is latest forecast models does keep Sam to the north of the islands. Interest in Bermuda, though, should monitor Sam because it is expected to begin to take a turn towards the north later on in the week. Elsewhere, we have subtropical storm Teresa. This one is very poorly organized and will be short-lived. You can see it will continue to move towards the west-northwest, remaining over the open waters of the Atlantic.
So, Dr. Postel, that's one sign that summer is not done yet, but we have some other signs, and they're a little bit more tropical.
You would be right about that, Molly. Thank you very much. And we are watching still a very active tropical atmosphere. We're in the heart of hurricane season still, believe it or not. I mean, you might think, okay, we're getting in October. Shouldn't it be over? No, we're in the middle of it, essentially, with a powerful hurricane out there in the middle of the Atlantic. Hurricane Sam, a Cat 3, 120 mile per hour or so hurricane. We're estimating that based on satellite-derived quantities, and we're basically sort of in that 120 to 130 mile per hour range, I think, as a major Category 3 hurricane moving westward. Now, you might think, okay, it's moving westward. Is it going to interact or interfere or impact significantly the islands of the Lesser Antilles? Probably not the worst of it. I think the most part it's going to slide on by to the north, but it's a long way out. It's 900 miles away, you can see, from the easternmost islands of the Caribbean. It may, over time, eventually graze some of the northern Leeward Islands with some peripheral impacts, maybe some gusty winds or maybe some showers, something like that. But overall, the core of this, which is really where the nasty stuff is in this powerful hurricane, that's likely to slide north of any of those Caribbean islands. You can see this is a powerful hurricane, all the attributes that you would expect with a major Cat 3 rolling around to the west over the main development region of the tropical ocean. And you can see there's a clear spot. That's the eye where the weather in the middle of it, not all that bad, but surrounding that is where those intense convective regime is, and that's where the strongest winds and the worst weather is by far. It is moving toward the west now, about ready to move in that direction, noticing keeping a very strong intensity the entire time. And many of us are wondering, will it ever get close to the United States? And I put on this headline, probably not. Nothing is ever for sure, but probably not. Let's start on Thursday. That's where we think it will be, somewhere inside of that zone. But I'm going to animate this out going day by day into Friday of this upcoming week and on into next weekend. And you can kind of sense that the guidance is telling us that, yeah, more likely than not, it's going to remain well offshore. Molly, that would be a good thing. We don't want any part of Sam.
So a little scale that we have, a little oppressive, muggy tomorrow, almost pleasant and very refreshing by Monday afternoon. Then the moisture creeps up just a bit there by Tuesday and Wednesday. We've been watching Sam closely. Rapid intensification today, Category 4, wind 145 miles an hour as it continues to move off to the northwest. 25 degrees north, that is the latitude right near Miami. So anything down here as a major hurricane is a concern. The track's still a bit of a concern, except by Tuesday and Wednesday, things change here, and that's forecasted to turn the storm to the north. Pretty good agreement in that. We're watching an upper low develop, and that'll create a little pathway for the storm to turn. The forecasts have been in pretty good agreement with that, so we're thinking that's likely here. But we'll continue to watch it because we have a major hurricane continuing to move to the northwest here at that low latitude. Latitude now 13.5 north, west-northwest at 8 miles an hour. Category 4 is the intensity there, with the wind 145 miles an hour. Now, day 4 to 5 in this hurricane center track just came in. Updates at 11 o'clock. You start to see that turn to the north here, and that'll be by the middle of the week. So we're continuing to watch this, moving to the west-northwest. But again, the forecast likely that it will turn to the north as it passes north of the Leeward Islands.
Well, we're tracking the tropics today and the path of Hurricane Sam, now a Category 4 major hurricane. So, of course, we want to bring in Dr. Postel with the latest on this. This is a monster storm swirling out in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah, Molly, you're exactly right about that. It's a very powerful storm, but thankfully it's kind of small-ish. At least the hurricane force winds, we think, are sort of concentrated right around the center. But look at this. It's a Cat 4 yesterday. This time was a Cat 2, then it strengthened even all day yesterday, and now we're dealing with a very powerful hurricane in what's called the main development region of the tropical Atlantic. So it's still way out there in the Atlantic, but steadily moving toward the west and slightly north of due west. That's important because every latitude that it gains, every bit northward it goes, means that it's going to be less and less likely that it's going to impact at all the islands of the Caribbean, the Leeward Islands of the Lesser Antilles. That would be a good thing. I think right now we could see some showers and some breezes in a few days' time as Sam continues to march on in that direction, but it's a long way off and now even heading north of due west. So I think major impacts will be avoided even in the Eastern Caribbean islands because we don't want a piece of this thing. If you look at it, my goodness, this is a very high-end hurricane with an eye so well defined and a cluster of thunderstorms symmetrically distributed around it. What does that fancy talk mean? This is a very dangerous storm that I hope nobody experiences. But I have a feeling at some point somebody will, and I'll explain in a second. But it's probably not going to be very many impacts, I think, even in the Lesser Antilles. You see the cone basically going almost due north eventually by the middle and latter stages of the upcoming week. That's good news for the east coast of the United States because it really does look like that when you look at the models beginning, let's say, on Friday, so we're going to start like 5 days out, Sam is probably going to be out here. And you can see that these individual tracks, sort of the simulations that are done over and over again, they're all also kind of going northward by the end of the week. I think that is going to be well established as we head toward, let's say, Thursday and Friday. But watch what happens as we continue to march through next weekend and even beyond. Well, if you have interests, let's say in Nova Scotia or in Newfoundland, we may have a close encounter with Sam, and that could bring a lot of bad weather as well. It certainly does look like the good news for the east coast of the United States as we've thought really all along, that Sam is going to miss wide right, way out in the Atlantic. But Bermuda, which is right there, heads up, we could have a close encounter there. And other areas, how about this? This is the last graphic I'm going to show you. I forgot to put the title on here, but this takes us out to about, a week to 10 days out. We may be dealing with Sam as it turns into a giant area of low pressure in the North Atlantic, impacting very significantly Europe and the UK as we go forward. So we have to watch this very carefully because, Molly, even if it misses the United States, somebody is going to be impacted by a very powerful storm over the next couple of weeks.
We're going to talk a little bit more about the tropics here, other areas that may be seeing some rainfall on the way up through the Lesser Antilles, where we have now Major Hurricane Sam continues to sit. It's a smaller scale of a storm, but this is still a very powerful hurricane. Not only that, we have 2 other areas trailing behind Hurricane Sam. The latest update from the National Hurricane Center, winds have increased to 150 miles per hour, and this is likely going to remain at that Category 4 strength over the next number of days. We'll keep an eye on this storm. You can always head to our website, weathernationtv.com, for the latest details and the latest forecast.
All right, thanks for that, Mark. A lot of people are talking about which season is it? Is it fall? Is it summer? Is it spring? Is it winter with snow throughout Alaska? Well, one thing is for certain, it is still hurricane season. Let's bring in hurricane expert Dr. Rick Knapp to break down all things tropics, specifically Hurricane Sam. Dr. Knapp, what's the latest?
Yeah, Sam is probably on the cusp of re-strengthening again, probably to Category 4 again. I'll give you the details on that in a little bit. I'm also going to mention what's going on with this area to watch near Bermuda, just to show you that you're going to see 2 systems in the models that I'll show you a little bit. And in a few minutes, I'll talk about the other tropical waves that are likely to develop in the deep tropical Atlantic. So first of all, here's Bermuda, here's North Carolina, and here's the remnants of Peter. Remember that one? That short-lived tropical storm, well, it has a decent chance of redeveloping briefly into a short-lived depression again, but it's headed northeastward. And if you look at it on the visible imagery, again, here's the east coast of the U.S., here's Bermuda, and there's the little swirl with some convection attached to it. That is what's left of Peter, but Bermuda doesn't have to worry about that. The big problem, the troublemaker, lies down here with our hurricane that is now getting stronger again. Sam is a Cat 3 at 120 miles an hour. So you're saying stronger. Well, that's down 5 miles an hour from the last advisory. But it probably bottomed out, relatively speaking, lower than 120 miles an hour since the 11 a.m. advisory. But now it looks like it's back on an upward trend, moving northwest at 9 miles an hour. You're going to get some dangerous swells in the Leeward Islands the next several days, but you're not going to get the full brunt of this hurricane. And the visible imagery shows that the eye is starting to clear out again, and it's starting to get better defined. Hurricane hunters are out there and they're noticing the pressures come down a little bit, and so that could portend some re-strengthening of the system. And the wind shear appears to be weak enough for the next few days, along with the warm waters, as it bends toward the north, as troughing over the eastern U.S. Causes it to turn northward, but it won't encounter cool waters until it gets well north of Bermuda late in the weekend. So here's the new track and intensity forecast. Still a major hurricane all the way up until it's past Bermuda, and then after that, possible entanglement with Atlantic Canada.
And we continue to track the tropics, including Major Hurricane Sam in the central Atlantic and 2 other potential systems.
And those 2 systems are likely to make history. Our severe weather expert Mike Lyons is back outside to talk about the tropics and the beautiful weather in your neighborhood and in his. Mike?
It's fantastic. I don't want to come back inside. Nothing against air conditioning. Trust me, I love AC. You guys know that, but it is incredible to be out here tonight. And as we pointed out earlier, Todd and Felicia, this great weather going to continue all the way through the end of the week. But let's talk a little bit about the tropics, because you mentioned Sam and the potential for 2 more systems, and that puts us right at the edge. We've had 19 named storms. 2 more would be 21, which means for only the 3rd time in history we would have used all the names on the list. We'll show you the names here in just a second, but let's begin with an update on Sam, which is getting a little larger tonight. The wind field expanding just a bit, and the fear from the Hurricane Center is that this storm is going to continue to intensify. Here's the 11 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Still incredibly powerful, Cat 3, winds 120 miles per hour. The good news, it's a fish storm, and it's going to stay that way. You can see the forecast track out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It may come close to Bermuda, and they'll certainly see some swells, as will parts of the Bahamas and maybe the eastern seaboard down the road. But the size of the storm, a little bit bigger in terms of its width, and it's also forecast to intensify again, could become a Category 4 hurricane as we head down the road. So let's look at the list as we continue this very active 2021 hurricane season. 19 storms, as you can see so far. That leaves 2 more names, and we may see those names later this week because we're watching 2 other disturbances in the eastern Atlantic. Both have an excellent chance. Hurricane Center says 80% on one, 90% on the other. By the way, both are likely to be fish storms as well. And some of our models are suggesting that they're kind of like this right now. They could do a little Fujiwara, a little dance in the eastern Atlantic, something to watch for in the coming days. But the question is, what happens when we exhaust all the names? Well, we have a supplemental list, and last year, you may remember, we used the Greek alphabet. Not anymore. Here's the list that we'll be using for 2021. And I think we're going to get through several of these names in October and maybe even November. And the reason is La Nina. It's starting to really develop in the Eastern Pacific and developing now in late September and early October. Historically, that means the hurricane season will be extended into October, maybe into November. So this La Nina really happening worst possible time. We'll see what happens. Most of the time we have those fronts coming through and we won't have to worry about storms, but still it could mean many of the names you see in that list, we could get through quite a few of them. But let's talk about the good stuff, and that's the 7-day forecast, which is, as I said before, incredible, unprecedented, amazing. Use any term you want. I mean, it is gorgeous. Enjoy tomorrow. Warm temperatures in the mid-80s, low humidity, nice little breeze, and ditto for the rest of the week. Maybe a couple of showers Saturday and Sunday. Nothing significant. You got to wait till next week before we get any rain. So again, outside, gorgeous right now. Enjoy this great weather, guys, because it's going to stick around for the rest of the week.
All right, Mike, thank you. At some point, you are going to have to come back inside, though.
We're tracking the tropics, and see all those circles and rings and things. It is active out there at the Atlantic as we continue to keep an eye on not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 different areas.
That's right. And Chief Meteorologist Phil Farrow has just run in with the latest information on all of it, because we like to bring it to you hot off the presses, Phil.
And indeed, first of all, let's take a look at Florida, because we are the envy of the nation right now. Temperatures are in the 80s everywhere, 86 in Miami and 84 in Fort Lauderdale. It has been really nice, and it's been nice as well throughout the islands. It's incredible to think that just a few hundred miles away is a Category 4 system with 130 mile per hour winds. Right now, the center is 530 miles east of the northernmost Leeward Islands, moving to the northwest at 9 miles per hour, and it looks like it will remain as a Category 4 through Thursday, and then a front will move off of the eastern seaboard, and now it looks like it will protect Bermuda as well, keeping this monster of a storm away from them. It should pass Bermuda sometime Saturday, still as a Category 3, and then by Sunday at 2 p.m. down to 105 miles per hour actually, and hopefully over Monday or Tuesday getting even weaker as it moves into the cold waters of the northern Atlantic. That also leaves 2 other areas that we are watching for possible development. Area number 1 there to the left of your screen, 80% chance for growth. Area number 2 just south of the Cape Verde Islands with a 90% chance for development. We'll take a look at that a little bit later on in weather.
Now, we stretch up into the high 80s by the early afternoon, but that's about where we should be this time of year. It's the humidity that has really made the difference, or the lack of, and it sticks around through the middle of the week. All right, in the tropics, this is interesting. Sam, winds at 140 miles an hour. It's intensified tonight and expected to get a little stronger. Will it reach a Category 5? It's not out of the question. That's not the official forecast, though. But the winds are expected to get, right now they're 140, expected to get up to around 145 tomorrow before it begins to weaken slowly. But it is still an impressive Category 2 way up into the North Atlantic. That is very unusual to see such an intense, even a forecast for that far north. There, the computer model tracks odd solutions as it gets up into Sunday and Monday in the North Atlantic, but it looks like it will stay well offshore and not have an impact on our weather, although it could have an impact on Atlantic Canada. All right, 30% chance for the remnants of Peter, 60% for the first invest. The second one, Invest 90, has a 90% chance, and if this is named in the next day or two, it will be Victor. That's our next storm name. There it is tonight as it rolls to the south of Cabo Verde Islands. The computer model tracks working well for us, taking it pretty far north very quickly through the rest of the week, so it shouldn't be a factor for our weather, but we'll monitor it nonetheless.
This, Alex, is that system in the far southeastern portion of the North Atlantic basin, way out by Africa. This was Tropical Depression 20. As of the 5 p.m. advisory, it is now Tropical Storm Victor, max winds at 40 miles per hour. Now, this is notable for a number of reasons. Number one is it's only the 4th time ever that we've gotten to 20 storms in an entire year. Okay, we had 30 last year in 2020. We had 28 in 2005. And the last time we even got to 20 for the whole year was 1933. So this is the 4th time we've ever gotten to 20 overall. And this is only the end of September. And this is the 2nd most storms on record by this date, eclipsed only by last year in 2020 when we had 23 storms by this time. Combination of a warming world and the technology to detect those short-lived, weaker storms. But this one is going to be a hurricane, we're pretty sure. Weak wind shear, a lot of warm water out there. And the good news about this one is it's going to be turning a lot sooner than Sam, and even a lot sooner than Larry did. So this is not going to be a big land impact for just about anybody. But in a few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about what the impacts of Sam will be. But notice, we only have one more name on the conventional list, Alex, Wanda. And then after that, we go to that auxiliary list. So this is getting to be a bad habit.
Let's turn our attention back to the tropics tonight and show you what's happening on the globe. There's one very distinct feature out there, and that is Hurricane Sam. Boy, this thing has been around for a while, and it's likely to stick around. Let's bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knapp, for analysis of Sam and beyond, Dr. Knapp, because there's another system that lined up right behind it with Victor.
Yeah, it's just amazing how the deep tropical Atlantic east of the Caribbean has become the focus over the last couple of weeks. Sam formed from a tropical wave into a depression a week ago, and it's got at least a week more to live in the northern Atlantic as it makes that turn east of Bermuda and thankfully also to the northeast of the Leeward Islands. This is a very well-formed Category 4 hurricane that has gone through some subtle ups and downs since it became a major hurricane, largely because of these internal structural changes, the eye wall replacement cycles. But now it looks to be poised to have another upturn because the eye is once again becoming even clearer and even better defined. And what an amazing sight it is. And it's really a good thing that this is not anywhere near land, because with that stadium effect that really gets amplified when you get the low angle of the sun near sunset, you can really see those overshooting tops in the eye wall and that kind of bicycle spoke effect with the low-level vortices rotating around inside that eye. So this is poised to get even stronger than the Category 4 hurricane with 130 miles an hour max winds that it has now, likely to get a little bit stronger of a Cat 4 as it continues moving pretty slowly. This has been a really slow-moving Atlantic major hurricane, SAM. See what I did there? Anyway, you look it up. Here's what we're going to have happening in the Windward and Leeward Islands. This is not going to be a direct impact in terms of the wind, but it is going to be continuing to bring dangerous swells life-threatening rip currents and surf spreading to the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. But as it moves northward, will it affect land? Will it affect Bermuda? Will it affect Atlantic Canada? Probably not directly, even though it's got all that warm water ahead of it. It'd be passing east of Bermuda as a major hurricane Friday night into Saturday. And then as it gets farther north and east, that will maybe tangle with Atlantic Canada. But along the way, starting Friday but peaking on Saturday, Mike, we're going to have the swells reaching the entire east coast of the U.S., life-threatening surf and rip currents. Listen to those lifeguards.
You know, we only have about 2 months left in the hurricane season as well, and it'll just be a couple days from now we flip the calendar to October. And October can be a really active month for tropical systems. Take a look at the map here. Where do they typically form? Well, these are historical origin points of all of our tropical storms and hurricanes during the month of October. They're all over the map, right? However, if you look closely, though, especially in the Caribbean and the Gulf, way over here, okay, these are the locations where we tend to see clusters of storms form. So, Dr. Nab, when we get later in the season, now October in particular, it seems like these more homegrown storms, as you like to call them, become a little bit more prevalent.
Yeah, you can get things happening out in the deep tropical Atlantic close to you on that map, but usually in the first half of October. And the farther we get into October, the more likely it is that the storms that do form are going to happen close to home, where the water stays warmer longer and the wind shear stays weaker longer to the south of the frontal systems and troughs and jet stream activity that's off to the north. And right now, we've got the beginnings of that pattern where upper level high pressure is taking up residence near and over Central America. And, you start to look for tropical waves that don't form out in the deep tropical Atlantic east of the Caribbean, come on into this region as we get into this time of year if they don't develop out there, and then take advantage of the warm water and weak wind shear, and also the built-in overall spin that you see in this part of the world that really amplifies as we get into October. So let's take a look at what the models do. So again, here's Sam, here's Victor, and you'll notice that Sam and Victor in the long range get a lot closer together. So let's go past Saturday and into Sunday and Monday. Here's the GFS as Sam, along with its trough, brings Victor northward. But then, what are these batches of color, low-level spin in the Bahamas and the Western Caribbean? Could be the tail end of fronts, upper level troughs inducing some spin, some tropical waves moving in. So I think increasingly next week, Mike, that we will be looking closer to home for potential development from that point forward.
In the tropics, Sam and now Victor out there. Let's talk about Sam first, because look at those winds, 145-mile-per-hour winds. Sam has already been a major hurricane for almost 5 straight days, thankfully missing the Caribbean here and also thankfully expected to miss Bermuda. But you can see just how massive this system is. Very large eye there, located several hundred miles to the northeast of the Leeward Islands. This is Victor, as we're down to the next to last name on the list, right? I mean, W is the only one left. And just like last year, we're going to exhaust our usual list of storm names. Victor is not expected to be a threat to land. Just like Sam, it is expected to stay out over the ocean. So you're looking at the forecast from the National Hurricane Center for both of these systems well out over the Atlantic. These systems are, thankfully, no threat to land.
Otherwise, temperatures headed to the upper 80s by about 2 o'clock. That's when we'll see our peak heating for the day. And then we'll start to see them coming down, and still a comfortable night in store for us. I know a lot of people have been loving the fall-like South Florida weather. We're still going to be fairly comfortable even into the evening hours tonight, but not quite as comfortable as where we start at the beginning of our work week. So that's still some good news there. And we've added in a few of these rain chances. Your first alert Doppler 6000 showing just few and far between as far as our showers are concerned. Most of these are sitting just off to the east of southern portions of Miami-Dade County and trying to make its way onshore, much of it fizzling out before it does. We have seen a few of these little tiny showers impacting folks in Palmetto Bay and points west, but they really fizzle out quickly, and they're moving quickly as well because of those winds that I showed you that were into the double digits. So good news there. We'll keep the rain chances fairly low. Hurricane Sam, wow, look at that. A Category 4 major hurricane continuing to move northwest at 13 miles per hour with those those winds at 145 miles per hour. That is a strong hurricane. The good news is we are not looking at impacts for us here in South Florida. There's Bermuda, really the only landmass that we have to worry about out in the Atlantic waters. And it looks like this system will stay to the east of it, so that's good news for folks in Bermuda. One thing to note, we'll see some swells that impact us along the east coast of the United States. And we also have Tropical Storm Victor. Right now, winds at 45 miles per hour moving west-northwest and going to stay close to the coast of Africa. Now, we've almost used all of our names for this season. We have one left, that's Wanda. We'll see if we can make it through the rest of the season without having to add on names, but so far we're into that second half of the season. We've already hit the peak, so good news there.
As far as our weather pattern, it's been so dry the last few days. Temperatures 70s to low 80s. In the tropics, it's really firing out. We have Sam. This is a 145-mile-an-hour hurricane. We also have, there it is, a close look at it there. I mean, it looks just as impressive as it has for the last week and a half. And this is expected to stay as a Category 4 as it moves just east of Bermuda. That'll happen on Friday evening, and then up into the North Atlantic. Still a hurricane as far north, but well past 45 degrees north, and eventually turning post-tropical after that. And from Sam to Victor, this still is looking more impressive, and the winds have also come up. Now 60 miles an hour. The official forecast still as a tropical storm, not a hurricane, and it goes very far, very fast to a northern latitude. So this, again, is another storm that will not have an impact here at all. That's what we like to see. It's amazing how many, well, we're 20 storms in already, and we haven't really had any significant issues here in our area for hurricane season. We have to like that.
We are still tracking two systems. Tropical Storm Victor spinning over the eastern Atlantic, and still a very powerful Hurricane Sam. The system is very scary looking as it is symmetric. It's a perfect hurricane. Look at that eye wall developing over the last few frames of my satellite. Winds of 150, headed west-northwest at 17, but expected to stay offshore from Bermuda, which is good news going into the weekend. All right, guys, we are just crossing off the names of the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. We're not expecting to track anything this weekend, so that's good news. Wanda will be around for quite some time, guys.
So date night is a go, and you can leave the umbrella at home. All right, let's get you the tropical update right now. I can let you know that the new advisory is in on Hurricane Sam, and you guessed it, it's still really strong with maximum sustained winds of 150 miles per hour, 240 miles southeast of Bermuda, and thank goodness the eye of this system is going to pass well east of Bermuda. It's moving north at 20 miles per hour, so only fringe effects there. It heads off toward the North Atlantic. Now, the swells from this system will reach the east coast of the U.S. tomorrow, so that's going to make for some life-threatening surf, and the rip current risk as well is going to be elevated. Outside of Sam, Victor is still way out there over the Atlantic, not a threat to land. I'll be back in a few minutes with a closer look at the weekend forecast. Nicole?
Well, time now for our daily check on the tropics. Meteorologist Luke Doris is in the Weather Authority Center with a look at what's out there. Luke.
Well, it's really pretty good news, even though we do have two storms on the board. We have tropical depression now, Victor, just about to die out. It's going to be a remnant low by tomorrow. It's out in the middle of the Atlantic, and then Sam. We're still talking about Sam, but both of these are out to sea. Now, Sam is still a Category 3 hurricane. It was a Category 3 hurricane last Saturday, and it's been a 3 or 4 ever since then. In fact, it ranks 11th of all hurricanes since we've had satellites for its length of time as a Category 3 or higher storm. This thing has just been relentless and intense. Now, it's going to become a northern type low, transition into a different type of storm by Tuesday, but it will still have hurricane force winds. And look at this thing. It's just humongous. Its tropical storm force winds will be 1,000 miles across, but again, out to sea. And here's some good news. We don't expect anything to form this week. No areas are being monitored to turn into depressions or storms, though we will be keeping an eye on the Caribbean. Nothing out there now, but the waters are very warm, and typically, once we're in October, this is where storms tend to form. Though for now, we're in good shape.
Of course, it is October. We've had plenty of tropical weather already across the Northeast, and we are not done yet.
And as they say on TV, but wait.
There's more.
There's more for sure.
Isn't that where they say it on TV?
We're on TV, so we said it. So it has to be true.
Okay.
Ha! Let's talk about this. October, believe it or not, is a fairly active month for tropical activity. We just have to look back to last year. We had Delta as well as even Zeta. Zeta was a Category 3 hurricane and making landfall in Louisiana. So did Delta earlier in the month. But Zeta was end of October too, so it's not just a couple of days in. And right now, the area of concern is the area we're watching here, moving across the southern Bahamas, Turks and Caicos. That's going to drift closer to home. We're talking about the southeastern U.S., Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, as we head through this week. Doesn't mean we'll definitely have something develop or a name, but we're going to have weather, moisture at the very least, a 20% chance to develop it, according to the National Hurricane Center. But we definitely have to pay attention closer to home for things developing, because this time of the season, they do pop up pretty quickly and then approach land quickly. And you get in the Gulf of Mexico, they got to hit land before they dissipate, and that's a big concern. Well, away from land, we still have Hurricane Sam, Category 2, now 100-mile-per-hour winds here, down from 100 and over 50 not too long ago, but now it's slowly dissipating, pulling away from the U.S. Great news. Then we have still Tropical Depression Victor. Not much left in Victor, but it's something we definitely want to watch, because that swirl could somehow still exist as it pushes on westward, but not a good chance of this being anything but something in the footnotes of this season. But again, we talked about that weakness there. The models, both the European and the American, are picking up on something, at the very least bringing more moisture into the southeastern U.S., whether it has a name or not. Doesn't matter. It's all about weather impacts. Even the American model still calling for something to drift towards that southeastern U.S. It also depends on what's going on here in the middle of the country. If a cold front could come through and definitely keep it off, or it could push northward and allow something to approach the U.S. So something we're watching closely as we progress into this week.
Right now, want to shift to the tropics. Dr. Nab watching the tropics may not be as concerned now as things coming off the coast of Africa as much as we're watching close to home.
Yeah, it looks like, Alex, that the flurry of storms that formed relatively quickly after leaving Africa, that led to Sam and that led to Victor and so forth, that might be coming to an end. We got to watch now for the tropical waves that could develop on our doorstep. But we do have a surface trough here that we'll deal with in a little bit. And I'm also going to tell you about what Sam is going to do. It is still a hurricane, although Victor is done. So let's take a look at this area to watch over the southeast Bahamas. Small chance of formation over the next 5 days, but if formation occurs, it could be really close to the southeast coast during this week. The reason why chances are so small to get a tropical depression or storm out of this area is because we have this big dip in the jet stream all the way down into the Caribbean. Tremendous amounts of wind shear. If you're going to get a low pressure system to form out of this, it'd probably be a little bit hybrid and at least be lopsided. For the most part, the western Atlantic is dominated by the Bermuda High and all the moisture coming into our stalled system over the continental U.S. But if you look real closely here in the southeast Bahamas, there is a weak surface trough. So there's a little bit of low-level spin in here. But again, look at that shear. So it just doesn't look like we're going to be able to get something to develop in this area, even though the waters are extremely warm where it is and you got the Gulf Stream. But let's take a look at the model, see what happens. Here's the low-level spin. All those colors there, that's the broad area of spin with that surface trough. But all these traveling white lines are the the upper level trough that's producing all the wind shear. Now here comes this area of surface spin. It's gentle, it's not a closed low, but it will be moving in the direction of the southeast coast as we get into Wednesday. And then Thursday and Friday, it's sitting right near the coast. But again, wind shear continues to be really strong. So I don't see much happening in either model. That was the Euro. Here comes the GFS. Again, spin will be out there. We'll have something to watch. We'll have to watch it closely to see if it pulls a fast one as it gets to the coast Thursday and Friday. But again, the atmosphere just doesn't look like it's very conducive for development there. But we'll watch it. Sam's still a hurricane. It's almost 2 weeks since this became a depression. Still a 90-mile-an-hour hurricane. Here's Newfoundland, St. John's. It is finally moving quickly off to the northeast. It'll slow down and will probably be a non-tropical but still hurricane force system tomorrow and hang around the North Atlantic for a few more days. Mike, Sam is one of the longest duration hurricanes that we've had in the Atlantic in a long time.
All right, let's talk about what's going on here in the tropics. Several things that we are keeping an eye on, a few areas to watch. Sam, which is now post-tropical.
Finally.
Oh my gosh, we've been tracking this thing forever, but yeah, we're going to say goodbye to that. Although, again, still packing winds of 80 miles per hour at this point.
As an extratropical system now here, but moving to the north at 23 miles per hour. It is 690 miles off the coast of Newfoundland, and that is key because there was always that chance, right? And we've been tracking it, like, well, how close will it get, right? So plenty away. It's been almost 8 days as a major hurricane.
How crazy is that?
That is crazy.
Yeah, insane. Yeah,
but
this
not
thing,
the record, but close.
Not the record. Very, very close. Now it's in the top 5. In fact, I think this graphic tells you. Number 1 is Ivan at 9. Sam now at the number 4 spot.
All right, here we go. Glad that one spent all its time over water, though.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, this was a beast. We really lucked out when it came to that one. All right, well, we've got this other area to watch. This one's here not too far from the Bahamas. That's where we're seeing some of the rain, mostly east of the Bahamas right now. Not the greatest of opportunities for this thing to develop. 10% chance the National Hurricane Center is giving it, but it is going to kind of slowly kind of meander closer towards the southeast coast over the next few days.
Yeah, and so the thing with this as it gets closer is that the moisture might get sucked into parts of the southeast. So that's something that we'll have to watch for, I think, is one of the bigger risks from having this potential opportunity out there for development. Watch what happens in the moisture. So you can see right there, kind of track it getting, mostly staying offshore, but just a little bit into the Carolinas as we get you into the end of the week. This is the Thursday time frame.
Yeah, just to kind of enhance some of the wet weather that we're already going to be dealing with here, just inject a bit more tropical moisture, deep moisture, so more chances for and more rain in those areas.
All right, so we're ticking down. We got 24% of activity remaining in the season, but look, we've had some bad ones late in the season, you know?
It's always that October uptick.
There always is,
before we drop off. So yeah, we got to be vigilant, no doubt about it, in the month of October. As we kind of span the entire Atlantic here for us, looking at the European model, kind of looking for any pieces of things to stick out in terms of low-level spin.
That's that Bahamas thing. It never really does much other than the moisture comes in, which is something, right? Here, heavy rain has been a big deal lately for a lot of folks.
And if it were to make its way into the Northeast, which is a possibility, that's an area that doesn't need any more rain. But look at the list of names, Jen. We've essentially gone through them all. What is left?
Wanda. We were in Greek names by this point last year.
So we're a little behind last year, at least.
Which was exceptional. But yes. So look, I think odds are that we will get a Wanda before the season wraps up. So we'll definitely get through the list. And if we don't get a Greek names this year, there's another list of names that is ready to go.
I want to take a look at what Pamela has done in Mexico. In Mazatlan, the storm came on shore as, as a hurricane. But regardless of when, so often is the case that it's the rain and the flooding that ends up being one of the biggest issues with tropical systems. And we see that there is still a tropical storm out there. It is, well, not so much out there. It's over there. It's over Mexico right now, and it's going to feed more moisture into the tail end of that system right there. There's also an area to watch in the Atlantic side of things. Now a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm over land, but moisture is now making its way into Texas here at the moment and will interact with a front that's going to be moving through the Lone Star State and bringing with it the potential for some flooding. Flash flood watches in effect here. This is a low chance from the National Hurricane Center, this area to watch that. It's going to develop into anything over the next 5 days. But of course, hurricane season is still on through the next month. We'll keep an eye on it for you, Jackie.
But Jim, we're talking nor'easter. I think a lot of people think snow, right? Well, not necessarily with this particular storm, but it's a strong one.
Yeah, it's going to bring everything else but snow, Kelly. And the good news is, I guess, for everybody, it's not Ida. But the bad news is we're still going to have flooding in spots. As a matter of fact, there are several roads that are taking on water right now in central New Jersey, especially around the Middlesex area, New Brunswick. To be specific, you can see this hose of moisture coming right up into upstate New York. So just kind of a quick analysis of this. And what's going on. You can see the main low, which is also an invest, by the way, and there's another one very close to New York City. So these two are together. This will be the primary low, the one that's over the water. What it's going to do is come north, develop, come west, and then go back out to sea. It could take on some tropical characteristics as we go on in time, but one thing it is going to do, whether it becomes Wanda or not, is produce a phenomenal amount of rain across parts of eastern Massachusetts, into Rhode Island and the Cape. So here's this development area as 94L works east. Whether it develops or not is irrelevant to us because we're still going to have the same impacts across the Northeast and in New England. So you can almost kind of see this little vortex right here, right? Kind of spinning and working its way on up through New York City. This is what's going to absolutely hammer Justin. He's probably already noticed an increase in the rain rates in that area. So I think we're going to get some more flood warnings out of this. I do. We're a foot above average in New York and much of the lower Hudson Valley here. And this kind of steady, heavy rain in through here at an inch an hour potentially is going to cause some big problems. So there's Middlesex, Morris, and Somerset County. This is where we're getting some of the newer reports of flooding reported on US 22 westbound. Metuchen here, there's several reports of flooding on Interstate 287. That was earlier with the accidents. And, of course, there's the New Brunswick report that just came in on Corporate Road, getting some pretty heavy rain in through here. A quick look at the guidance here, Jordan, just to let everybody know. Let's see what New York's in for. They're still in it right through about lunchtime today. Here comes that low pressure system. Kind of looks a little like it wants to be a tropical thing, doesn't it? Wind, rain, doing the loop-the-loop, and then heading back out to sea. What a wild ride we're going to go on with this thing, buddy.
All right, as Viv just mentioned, people in New England waking up to some pretty wicked weather with the first nor'easter of the season. Winds picking up there and even leveling some trees.
Yeah, 7's Juliana Mazza is live on Cape Cod with more on the conditions there. Juliana, we see the wind is still strong.
Yeah, Ethan, Lorena, good morning. The conditions here, not great. Tell Vivian we want her to send some of that sunshine and the warmth to us. We could use it. I'm here right outside of a beach here in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. I know I've been with you guys all morning, and if I just kind of turn my body to the wind here, I don't know if you can hear any of this, but it's not good. The wind is really, we're talking wind gusts over 80 miles an hour in the area where we are. And because, like I mentioned, we're right by the beach, all that wind, it's been pushing the water up, and we're starting to see some minor flooding here. What you're looking at, this is a parking lot. Right now, it looks more like a river, and you can see the wind pushing and moving all of that water here. And again, the wind, also a big concern when it comes to power outages. I think Vivian had mentioned this as well. We're talking close to 500,000 people throughout the entire state without power. And this is a look at why. You know, the wind blowing all of these power lines here, and we've got reports of power lines down all across the state. This morning, a live power line came down across a woman's vehicle. She is safe and doing okay, but that's just one scenario of dozens, I'm sure, where we're talking about power lines coming down, trees coming down. Dozens of schools have had to cancel because they just don't have any power. The situation and the wind here is just relentless. So that really is the concern for us here in New England. So we're hoping that you guys have a much better beach day on tap down there in Miami. We're live on Cape Cod. Juliana Mazza, 7 News, today in Florida.
All right, Juliana, stay safe, and we'll make sure to think about you and all of our friends in the Northeast whenever we get to enjoy the sunshine this weekend.
That's exactly right.
Residents in Philadelphia are experiencing major flooding. This after heavy rain combined with high tide forced the Delaware River to overflow. The Delaware River flowed onto streets, forcing some to abandon their vehicles, while others attempted to drive through the water. Other roads were also closed due to flooding.
A little bit south, power crews working around the clock to restore power after the storms in the Washington, D.C. area. Wind and rain bringing down trees and power lines on Friday. Thousands of homes and businesses lost power. A number of traffic signals were knocked out. The outage is caused by 40 to 45 mile-per-hour winds.
All right, some new information tonight. As of 11 o'clock, we now have subtropical storm Wanda. So we have now made it to the last name on the 2021 hurricane list. So Wanda has been kind of spinning around for a while. It's located about 825 miles to the southeast of Newfoundland. And right now it's moving to the southeast quickly at about 21 miles per hour. But in time, it is going to take a turn more to the north, forecasted to strengthen a little bit and then weaken down to a remnant low by Thursday. So Wanda should stay a fish storm, which I'm starting to think about a movie title right now. There's Wanda on satellite imagery, and it's small, and it is, again, going to just kind of spin out there in the central Atlantic, but no worries to any land masses. We're also watching a little disturbance off the coast of Africa with a 30% chance of development in the next 5 days, but it's not overly likely to develop as it is expected to interact with some kind of hostile winds, so that will probably shear this system apart.
Good morning, everyone. Tracking the tropics, time is 5:10, and we're tracking 2 areas out there. And now we have subtropical storm Wanda, the last name on the list, with sustained winds of 50 miles per hour, and it formed last night around 10:30 at night. And good news, it will be tracking away from the United States and then becoming a tropical storm system and then dissipating out to sea. Then we have another disturbance, Invest 95L, off the coast of Africa. As you can see, all the computer models suggesting that it will track west-northwest and turning out to sea, and it has a 30% chance for tropical development.
And that's what our 6 to 10 day outlook actually shows. It's bringing those trends along for a likely below average temperatures as we head into next weekend and for the start of next week as well. So that's a good sign. We could see some cooler temperatures returning once again. Keeping an eye on the tropics, Wanda out there in the northern Atlantic, and we're also keeping an eye on an area off the coast of Africa for some development. Those 2 areas are not a threat to us here in South Florida. Wanda will continue to meander in the northern Atlantic before heading into cooler waters and eventually weakening. It's not a threat to land at all, but will likely impact ship travel across the northern Atlantic over the next couple of days. We've exhausted all the names on the season list. If another one is named, we'd have to go over to the supplemental list, which starts with the letter A.
November reminds me of spider webs because of all the isobars that we see on the map this time of year. I mean, you just showed 2 cases of that, and that's a lot of wind. One thing you didn't show was hurricanes, though. So we do have to talk about that because we still are in hurricane season all the way until the 30th.
Yeah, we have been, and we've been in a very active season, really. 2021 will go down in the record books as a very busy one, but not lately, right? I mean, in the last like 4 to 6 weeks, it's been unusually quiet. And when you look out there in the tropics, we have some things to watch. But this is not really sort of a symptom of, an active period yet to come. We may be shutting the hurricane season down. We'll wait and see on that. But one of the reasons why, let's say, even in the latter stages of September and October, we didn't see much activity emerge from the tropics, including the Caribbean, is because we didn't have a lot of good candidates for development. The tropical easterly waves, the African easterly waves that came off Africa, were typically weaker than average, and that is one of the reasons why I think we didn't see a whole lot of busyness in this part of the world, where we know it's still in October it can be, and we just didn't see it, guys. We were sort of closing the window on the season, I think, overall.
And that may be a good thing here for us as we look to the future, because when you talk about those tropics and some of these systems, they can oftentimes, this time of the year, meet up with the jet stream and bring us some pretty powerful systems.
One of my favorite things to research and to look at is how the tropics and the extratropics interact. In other words, when you get these tropical systems, they can move northward, interact with the jet stream, and you can get some big-time fall storms from it. Good news, we don't see that now, but we may in the coming weeks. We'll be right back.
Yeah, Wanda is still spinning out into the Atlantic, up into the northern Atlantic. It's kind of incredible how many storms we've had this year that have made it so far north into those cooler ocean waters, still maintaining tropical storm and hurricane strength. Now, we expect Wanda to kind of go south and then turn back north. We've got not a whole lot of steering going on in the Atlantic, so this storm going to do some wonky stuff, kind of do almost a 90-degree turn as we head into the second half of the weekend, expected to eventually become subtropical. Now, we've made it all the way through that traditional list of names for 2021. Well, now we have to go to the alternate list of names. If you'll remember, last year we used the Greek alphabet. Well, that was deemed a little too confusing. So now we're back to an alternate list. Adria is our next name system if we get one. But right now, no major areas of interest. November, typically a quiet month, as the official end to Atlantic hurricane season is at the end of November. Big smile on my face there because we're almost through it, guys, and we have done relatively calm the last few weeks.
The very last day of the month, and that means it's the end of the Atlantic hurricane season. While the season ended with a whimper, it was actually busier than average with a few very memorable and devastating storms. Now, things got rolling ahead of schedule with Tropical Storm Ana. The storm formed in mid-May before the official start of the hurricane season. It was the 7th consecutive year with an early start. The storm stayed out into the Atlantic, but did kick up some waves along the Carolina coastlines. Well, we also saw Tropical Storm Fred, which first made landfall in the Dominican Republic before making landfall in the U.S. on the Florida Panhandle. Henri made landfall as a tropical storm in Rhode Island on August 22nd, but even before landfall, the storm brought flooding rain to much of the Northeast, including in New York City. But the biggest blow to the U.S. this season certainly was Hurricane Ida. It was the second most destructive hurricane to hit Louisiana, behind only Katrina in 2005. The storm caused widespread damage in southern Louisiana, and the remnants went on to do damage, triggering tornadoes and deadly flooding in the Northeast days later. Chris, a season to remember for sure.
It absolutely is. And remember, a busy season isn't always a bad season. A slow season isn't always a good season, right? It all comes down to landfall. You can have a lot of systems an active season, but if they all go out to sea, then no problem. Yeah, for the most part. However, that wasn't the case this year with 21 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and there was Cat 3 or stronger than major hurricanes. There were 4 of those. And 8 landfalls. So 8 storms, tropical storms or hurricanes, did make landfall. One of those, of course, Ida, a Category 4 hurricane, as we watched it come on shore in Louisiana. Again, total of 8 landfalling systems here. And Louisiana, we saw last year, of course, was essentially at the crossroads for some pretty nasty storms and hurricanes here. And then again, this year, similar deal, more storms coming through, and of course can't forget Ida, which eventually went on to do some issues in other parts of the U.S. So as far as the season goes, just about every month had something, and of course, as you would expect, the peak of hurricane season, Tevin, late August through September, really living up to it this year.
Yeah, Chris, absolutely. And at 50 past the hour, by the way, we're going to hear from Lisbeth Jackson, a Hurricane Ida survivor. She rode out the storm as it came ashore in Louisiana back in August. This is what she had to say the last time we spoke with her during our